okay, which starts off with all about the para aduma, right? A chok is a mitzvah. There are different types, different categories of mitzvot. A chok is a mitzvah that the reason behind it is not shared with us. The epitome, it's not that it doesn't have a reason, but it's that the reason has not been shared with us. The epitome of the achok is that of the para aduma, of the red heifer. That if a person became tamei, ritually impure, through coming in contact with a mate, with a deceased person, there's a whole process with a red heifer that is slaughtered, and then it is burnt, and the ashes are mixed with living water and are sprinkled on the third and seventh day, and that's how the person becomes tahor, right? Completely beyond us. This is the quintessential chok, as it is called. But, and I don't want to spend time on this, we're going to jump to another point, because we often get not stuck, but we end up spending a lot of time on this. I want to jump to a later, very interesting episode of the Parsha. But it's interesting to note that the pasuk begins, Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is the chok of the Torah, as opposed to Zot Chukat HaTum'ah. This is the chok that applies to the purification process of someone who's tamei. We're saying this is the chok of the Torah, of the entire Torah. And an explanation that's given is that Torah life is a chok. We often think that we understand something, and we don't understand. It's something that we think is the greatest calamity for us might be a tremendous bracha. Something that we think is a tremendous bracha, blessing, might end up being a bit calamitous. Right? Life is hidden. Much of life is hidden for us. Much of life is this idea of a chok. And a chok is important. Right? In a relationship, which is what we are meant to have with God, a chok means that I trust what the other is saying, and I don't need to fully ascribe to it, but it's important to you, therefore it is important to me. Right? That is the classic idea of a chok. If it's something that's important to you, then even though to me I don't get it, but I will give that importance because you are important to me. So even though this is not important to me, you are important to me, this is important to you, therefore this is important to me. That's basically the mathematical law that we apply, and that applies also when it comes to our relationship with Hashem. Yes?
They say something here kind of interesting. They said if there's something in Torah that looks like, like why, then we're questioning it, or why that's even there. That's the deficiency in us.
Okay. Yochanan?
I was going to say it's also the same thing that you said between us and Hashem. It's also between us and men, people, relationship.
Yeah.
That they do it, they love you so much, they respect you, they'll do it even though they don't believe in it,
Right.
or understand it.
Yeah.
They'll do it.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're important to me and this is important to you, then this becomes important.
Right.
Important to me. Yeah. And it's very important that we apply our between man and man, and between our man and God. Actually, I thought of I think it's a good parable for this. That often many people will say, listen, bein adam lechaveiro, between man and man, that's what I'm into. That's important. Between bein adam lemakom, between me and God, that's not really my my realm. And what's important is how we treat other people, right? Many people ascribe to that view. Imagine a person who's got this warehouse. And this warehouse is the chesed, the kindness center. They distribute food to whoever needs. They distribute clothing to whoever needs. They are incredibly giving to the entire community, to all who need. They are just the givers, the helping hands. But imagine if they don't take the time to thank the benefactors who are stocking that warehouse. They're distributing nonstop. But they don't take the time to thank those who are stocking that warehouse, those who are filling up the warehouse with all that it has. Clearly, not only is there something lacking in their relationship with the benefactor, there's something lacking in that which they're giving out to the other people if they don't take into account the one who is stocking it. And that, in a way, is bein adam lechaveiro without bein adam lemakom. If we're so good to other people, we don't take out the time to appreciate and to build a relationship with the one who is stocking us with all that we have in terms of whatever it is, whether it's just the good kindness personality that we have or the means that we have, or whatever it is, we don't take out time to appreciate the one who is stocking, so then really there is something seriously lacking even in our bein adam lechaveiro, in our giving to others. But let's jump up ahead and let's get to a very difficult, troubling Parsha that we have on page 842. It is the Aliyah of Shlishi, Pasuk Zayin and Chet over there. Marta, why don't you lead off us in Hebrew?
Where are we reading from?
Page 842, Pasuk Zayin Chet.
וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, קח את המטה והקל את העדה, את אהרון אחיך, ודיברתם אל הסלע לעיניהם, ונתן מימן, ורוצה לכם מים מן הסלע, והשקית את העדה ואת העברה.
Okay, good. Let's go back a little bit for the English. Let's go to the beginning in English of chapter 20. Page 843, chapter 20, verse 1. Ava, you want to take that for us?
Okay.
No, Ava, I said.
Oh, okay.
The children of Israel, the whole assembly, arrived at the wilderness of Sin in the month of the people settled in Kadesh. Miriam died there, and she was buried there.
So they came there the first month. What's the first month? Nisan. Now, what year is this of their travels? So Miriam had died there. Okay? Rashi explains, let's say on the next pasuk, Rashi explains that this was the 40th year. Okay? There was no water, continue.
There was no water for the assembly, and they gathered against Moses and Aaron.
Okay, because the be'er, the well, was there in the zechut, in the merit of Miriam. Miriam has died. There is no water there. Okay?
The people quarreled with Moses and spoke up, saying, "If you would only have perished as our brethren perished before Hashem."
Oh, which brethren perished before Hashem? What are they referring to?
Aaron's sons?
I'm sorry?
The sons of Aaron.
The people that died because of the
Over the 40 years.
Oh.
Everyone who had been part of that had died.
Okay, I have a question about that.
Yes?
If this has been 40 years and he and Moshe was with confronted Paro when he was 80, then how could he have died on his 120th birthday?
So this is in the 40th year, it would seem. Right? This is in the 40th year. Right? Okay.
Why
So-
have you brought,
Continue, yes?
why have you brought the congregation of Hashem to this wilderness to die there, we and our animals? And why did you bring us from Egypt to bring us to this evil place? Not a place of seed or fig or grape or pomegranate. And there's no water to drink.
Okay, so here we are 40 years later. Wow. And we're still singing the same song. Right? Right? You haven't brought us. Why'd you take us out from Egypt? I mean, Egypt is like this distant memory now. Right? You haven't brought us to the land of Israel. Right? It was supposed to be sort of a short trip. And here we are, right, in the 40th year. And with still no pomegranates, no figs, no grapes, no seeds. What are we still chewing on? Right, on the man. Spam, 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 little Monty Pythons. Right, that's what we have over here. Right? Right, here we are. Right, now we can understand what this is going to do to Moshe and Aaron. Right, Moshe and Aaron, let's continue Pasuk 6. Okay, right, Eve, now you take that one.
Okay, Moshe and
6.
and Aaron went from the presence of the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. The glory of Hashem appeared to them.
And here we go. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, continue.
Take the staff and gather together the assembly. You and Aaron, your brother, and speak to the rock before their eyes that it shall give its waters. You shall bring forth for them water from the rock and give them drink to the assembly and to their animals.
So Moshe was supposed to speak to the rock. Now 40 years ago, what was Moshe supposed to do?
Hit the rock.
Hit the rock. Now Moshe is supposed to speak to the rock. And what happens? Linda, take that, verse 9.
Moses took the staff from before Hashem as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation before the rock, and he said to them, Listen now, O rebels, shall we bring forth water for you from this rock? Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock with his staff twice. Abundant water came forth, and the assembly and their animals drank.
Okay. So Moshe, now also interesting is, God told Moshe back in verse 8, take the staff and gather together the assembly. Right? Take the staff and gather the assembly. Yet he's supposed to take the staff, but not use it. Right? He's supposed to speak. Okay, we'll soon see many different approaches to this. Moses struck the rock with his staff twice. Abundant water came forth, and the assembly and their animals drank.
I still don't get it though, like if he is that there was time in between the confronting of Pharaoh and the 40 years. I think those were like 1 year or 2 years, and that would add up. That means he would die past 120.
We'll have to work out the time.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's really.
We'll have to work out the time. Right? We'll have to work out the time. Okay? Let's go to verse 12 now. Let's hear the repercussions. Hashem. Vayomer Hashem Moshe vel Aaron. Hashem said to Moshe, Aaron, Yan. Yafi, בעברית בבקשה, פסוק י"ב.
ויאמר השם אל משה ואל אהרון, יען לא האמנתם בי להקדישני לעיני בני ישראל, לכן לא תביאו את הקהל הזה אל הארץ אשר נתתי להם, הם עמי מריבה אשר רבו בני ישראל את השם ויקדש בם.
Wow. Verse 12 in English, please.
Hashem said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you will the land that I have given them.
One more.
They are the waters of strife, where the children of Israel contended with Hashem, and he was sanctified through them.
Wow. So here we go. Moshe is the number one man. And the thing that he wanted most was to go into the land of Israel. And because he, I don't want to say what he did wrong, because we're going to soon see many different views on what he did wrong. Right? But because of his error over here, and his not being makdish, not sanctifying God's name, then the result was that he will not be able to enter into the land of Israel. Okay, just 1 second.
It seems really unfair.
It seems really unfair.
I mean,
seems
40
pretty.
years
I'm with
of doing
you.
the right thing,
All right, right.
and he didn't.
Okay,
Maybe
just
he
1
hit
second.
the rock, but getting water from the rock at
Yeah,
all.
yeah. Let's go through this. Okay, what was the sin of Moshe over here? What did he do wrong? Right?
Hashem to perform the miracle.
How do we see he did not trust Hashem to perform the miracle, Aaron?
Instead of talking to the rock.
Okay, so Rashi.
Or maybe it wasn't completely. Maybe it was so frustrated and angry.
Okay, so Rashi learns Hashem told him to speak to the rock, and instead of speaking to the rock, what did he do? He hit the rock. That was the grievous mistake that Moshe made, and therefore would not bring us into the land of Israel. The Ibn Ezra says that he understands that it was, he brings those who explain. He brings different explanations. One way of looking at it is, there's nothing wrong in hitting the rock. When you speak to a rock, right? How does one communicate with a rock? With a stick, right? Address the ball. Hello, ball, right? The way the issue wasn't hitting instead of speaking. The way that you speak to a rock is by hitting it. Rather, the problem was, right? Ki adibur l'sela hi ha'aka'a. The way you speak to a rock is by hitting it. Right? You're not going to debate it. You're not going to convince it otherwise. The problem was that he hit it twice, and he should have only hit it once. Others say that after Yam Suf, after the splitting of the sea, Moshe led the song of Az Yashir. And here we don't see Moshe offering great praise. So it wasn't a problem in not speaking, it wasn't a problem in hitting, it wasn't a problem in hitting twice, it was a problem in not singing afterwards. Others say, what was the sin of Moshe? What did Moshe say to the children of Israel? Shimuna Hamorim. Right? Listen, you rebellious ones. Right? Now, that's no way to speak to the children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So the problem was the way that he spoke to them. The Rambam in Shmona Maimonides says that the issue was that Moshe got angry. That was the issue, that Moshe got angry. But it goes beyond just the problem of getting angry. Because anything that Moshe did was seen as a reflection of the way Hashem was feeling. So if Moshe got angry, that is an indication that Hashem was angry with them. And we don't find that Hashem was angry with them. So Moshe's anger, besides the issue of anger in and of itself, Moshe's anger was a misrepresentation of the way God was with them. Others say, and Ramban brings this, that they said, right, Hamin hasel hazeh notzi lachem mayim. Are we going to bring out water for you from this rock? Right? Which seem to imply, as opposed to yotzi, will God bring out? Right? Seem to be implying that it's us. We are the ones who are doing it. Many, many, many different approaches here. I want to double back to Rashi and give a perhaps a deeper explanation of that. But first, I want to explain, to go through pasuk by pasuk the way the Kli Yakar explains it, right? Which is a fascinating approach. Pasuk Chet, verse 8. Kach et ha-mateh. Take the staff.
So the question is, why did he even told him to take a mateh if he was supposed to speak and not to hit the
Good.
one?
Why is he going to take a staff, right, if he's not supposed to use it? Good. So the Kli Yakar explains as follows. Right? He asks Yafi's question. In Tzivoshin ledaber lasela in kein matazeh lama lo. If he's supposed to speak, why is he being told to take this staff? See, he says, it doesn't say take your staff. What is your staff from Moshe? What does that refer to? The staff that Moshe used. What did he use that staff to do? Right? Was that?
Red Sea.
The Red Sea. Good. What else? Eser Makot, the plagues. That's matcha. He doesn't say take matcha. He said take the staff. It seems that it's one that he knew about. A specific one. And the Pasuk 9, Pasuk Tet says, V'yikach Moshe tamateh mi lifnei Hashem. Moshe. So the mateh mi lifnei Hashem. Which mateh did we just hear about? Which was put lifnei Hashem, was put before God? Oh, Aaron's staff. What happened with Aaron's staff? It blossomed. Right? Almonds. Right? Almonds came out from Aaron's staff. And that staff was placed where? In the Mishkan, right? As a testimony. So take that mateh, milifnei Hashem, take that mateh, take Aaron's staff. Why Aaron's staff? Well, what was Aaron's staff looking like before, and what was it looking like after?
It was just a branch.
It was just a branch. What is a staff? A dried out piece of wood. Right? What is a rock? A dried out piece of stone. Right? And then what happened to Aaron's staff? It grew, it blossomed, flowers, buds, almonds. Right? It produced. Right? It must have had its water if it was able to produce that. So even though one could not see any water, it must have had its water to produce that. Therefore, this was meant to be the sign to the people. Moshe yikach mateh Aaron v'yar'el kol Yisrael, show to all Israel. Lomar, to say, Kashem shotzi Hashem mayim min etz yavesh, the same way that there was water here, that God brought out water, so to speak, from this dried wood. so too he'll bring out water from this sewer, from this rock. And it said then, next thing the pasuk, V'dibartem el hasela le'einehem, speak to the sela before their eyes, v'natan me mav. Right? And you tell this rock that it should do that which this mateh, that which this stone did. What actually are you saying to it? So the Kliyaka learns, V'dibartem el hasela le'einehem, quote, v'natan me mav. What should you tell the stone? Quote, what should you tell him? Natan me mav. What should you do? Give your water. Give its water. Okay, that's what Moshe was supposed to do. And he took that mateh from before God as he was, right? And it will give forth water. V'shkita ida. Vayikach Moshe et hamateh. Moshe did just that. He took that staff from before Hashem because he understood that this was that mateh of Aharon. Now, Vayikach Moshe et hamatem lifnei Hashem kasher. He took that mateh as he had been commanded. And then what did he do? Vayakilu, he gathered everyone together. Shimona Hamorim. Vayarem Moshe et yado. Vayach et hasela. He, Yarem Moshe et yado. Literally, he lifted up his hand, and he hit the rock. Now, the way the Kliyakar understands this is fascinating. Let's look back to Kriyat Yam Suf, to the splitting of the sea. Let's see what it says over there. Page 374. One second. I'm sorry. Let's go back to 370. Sorry. Aharon be'ivrit, pasuk tetvav, verse 15. Vayomer Hashem, page 370. Pasuk tetvav.
ויאמר השם אל משה, מה תצעק אליי? דבר על בני ישראל וייסעו. ואתה הרם את מטך ונטה את ידך על הים ובקעתו ויבואו בני ישראל בתוך היבשה, בתוך הים ביבשה.
Perfect. In English, please. Someone take for us 15:16.
Hashem said to Moshe, "Why do you cry out to me? Speak to the children of Israel and let them journey forth. And you, lift up your staff and stretch out your arm over the sea and split it. And the Bnei Yisroel shall come into the midst of the sea on dry land."
Okay. So is it the hand or the staff over there? What's happening over there? A little ambiguous, right?
Well,
Right? So the way the English translates it, right, it seems to be both. Lift up your staff, unatei et yadcha. The way the Kliyakar understands this is as follows. Harem et matcha, harama lashon siluk. Remove, put aside, lift up, right? Send away, put away your staff over there. And netei et yadcha, put your arm out, not your staff. Why? Because people were saying, oh, Moshe, right? Remember, they're coming from Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is a place filled with sorcery, right? When Moshe took the staff and threw it down and became a snake, who did Paro summon? Sorcerers. But even more than sorcerers. Who did he, right? He brought the kids, right? The kindergarten. He brought over the preschool, right? And what did they do? They all did the same thing, right? The Medrash says, an expression, are you bringing hay into a barn? Right? Or we would say, is that all you got? Right? That's what you're doing? Right? You're turning a staff into a staff, right? So, and then, but Moshe's staff ended up doing the makot. right? And doing all these things. Now people are starting to say that there was this perhaps doubt that it was this powerful staff that Moshe had. And therefore he was told, right, Harem, get rid of that mateh. Kedei lo tzimi libam, right? And that way no one will think that it is the staff. So the way the Kli Yakar learns back over here in Bishalach is Harem l'salek, unetei et yadcha, and extend your hand over. Don't use the staff. Use your hand. That's what it says, Vayaretz Yisroel et hayad hagdolah. They saw what? What's a yad hagdolah? The great hand. Right? Naseh biyad v'lo b'mateh. That which was done with the hand, not with that magical, so to speak, stick. And therefore, Vayaminu ba'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdo, we say. And now they trusted in God and in Moshe, his servant, because until then, they were a little bit unsure exactly what is bringing. There was always that doubt. So there, it was to teach the lesson that God doesn't need any props, any implements. It's not this magical stick. Remove the stick and put out your hand. Here we are now, 40 years later. And we've got to have that same lesson. Okay? Now, instead, what happened? Just 1 second. Now what is Moshe supposed to do? Again, not use the stick. Okay? Not use his mateh. What happens instead? Vayikach Moshe. Okay, 1 second. Vayarem Moshe et Yado. Pasuk 11, Yud Aleph. Moshe, so to speak, the way the Kli Yakar understands it, he removed his hand. And what did he do? Vayachet hasela b'matehu pa'amayim. He hit the sela with what?
The stick.
Right? Not the stick that we had before. Matehu means his stick. Not hamateh. That was the stick of Aaron that was supposed to show. What did he do? He used his mateh. So what is he doing now? He's setting everything back in time. Now it looks like for this new generation, almost 40 years later, for this new generation, what do we have? We have this magical stick that is at play. That, the Kli Yakar understands, is the problem. Vayom Hashem Moshe v'Aaron, Yan lo ha'amant bi lahakdisheni. You did not sanctify me. How is it not sanctifying God? Because it looks like it's the stick again. The magical stick again. Aye. Therefore, lachein lo taviu. That is how the Kli Yakar beautifully navigates his way through the psukim over here. Let's though... Sorry? Yes, Jan.
Given that it's Moshe, Hashem knows, so I get, but it's still, there's some disconnect here, because isn't it, knowing the bit we do about Moshe, isn't it almost impossible that Moshe would act to not sanctify Hashem?
Well, he clearly didn't. The pasuk says, Yan lo hamanta bi lahaktisheni. Right? There was clearly something remiss in Moshe over here.
When did Miriam die? And when did the well go dry?
Right before this.
Maybe he was really in a lot of remorse. Miriam died.
Okay. That's you're raising a good point, right? We had mentioned earlier that when we look at Avraham, we normally look at Avram that the greatest of his challenge, the 10th Nisayon, was Akedat Yitzchak, his willingness to bind Yitzchak onto the altar. But Rabbeinu Yonah says that what really the big or there was another nisayon challenge that followed afterwards. What was that? The challenge was the death of Sarah, and then having to go to Machane Yehuda or the Arab Shuk to start to handle, to start to deliberate over there and barter and work out the agreement for Marat HaMachpelah, for the burial grounds. And as we know, what Shiva does is it puts this cocoon around a person. They stay in their house and they don't deal with all the trivialities and the silliness of life. I mentioned before, I remember when I was sitting Shiva for my father, Zichrono Livracha. I was living in Israel, but we sat Shiva, I and all my siblings, we sat Shiva in New York for part of the Shiva, and then we all left in the middle of Shiva to go back to our respective communities. Natalie, I, and little baby Devora, we traveled back to Israel. Right? And as I'm walking out of the house, I see someone walking their dog. I thought to myself, who cares about a dog? Right? A dog! Right? You know, right after a loss, we can't deal with the triviality. I get to the airport. Did you pack your bags? Did you pack your bags by yourself? Did anyone give you? I deal with that fine all the time. I just said, Natalie, you got this one. You can't deal with the trivialities. That's what the Shiva does. It puts a cocoon around us to protect us until we have healed enough to deal with the outside world. Right? Healing is a lifetime process. But until we've healed enough to deal with the outside world. And here was Avram, right after the death of Sarah, having to deal with the purchase of the burial grounds, right? And they're driving him crazy. Ephron is changing. Ephron is adding in. Ephron's making him Meshuggah. And nevertheless, he has the epitome of calm, serenity, respect, right? That was Avram's great nisayon. She's making a great point. That Moshe, we could think we could cut him some slack. He just now lost his sister. Miriam has just died. Nevertheless, there is that which is demanded from Moshe. And clearly, Janet, we see from the wording of the Psukim, right, that Moshe was not Makdish Shem Shamayim as he should have. We can't get past the pasuk which says, Yan lo hemantem bi lahakdisheni leinei b'nei Yisrael. Right? As hard as that is.
But Rabbi,
Yes.
to continue this, situation that Moses was in after Miriam, there's a whole thing with Bnei Israel complaining 40 years, and here they complain again, and you could see from the Psukim that the way he talks to them is that he had it, and he was probably so angry and so disappointed and so frustrated.
Right. We would call this a meltdown.
The first thing that he did was the natural.
Yes, but nevertheless, Moshe is not, God does not cut Moshe the slack for that.
That's what if God is El Rachum V'Chanun,
which means Moshe had the ability to not, look, we all have our meltdowns. We all react certain ways to things, and afterwards we look back at ourselves and say, why did I give them control over me? Why did I let them push those buttons? I should have stayed in control. Right? We ourselves look back and say, I'm not happy with the way, I'm disappointed in myself. Right? I can't give them the keys to my ignition. I can't allow them to push me to the point that I lose control of the way I want to act. They can control what they do. I've got to control what I do. And clearly, we don't get a nisayon that we can't handle. We don't get a challenge that we can't handle. And we're not held responsible for failing a challenge that was not a challenge for us because it was beyond our control. So clearly Moshe had the ability to retain his equanimity and not have a meltdown of sorts, and he's held responsible for that.
But on the other hand, there's El Rachum v'Chanon, the God that is good and merciful and forgiving, and He forgave Bnei Israel for so many times.
Yeah.
The top was the golden calf, and Moshe was the one
who brought about that forgiveness.
And he has no one above him to talk for him.
Yeah.
So why isn't God here?
So good. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Forgiving
Yafi,
to the
I'm
one
with you.
that is living and do everything for 40 years.
Let's try to understand. Okay? And I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you a beautiful presentation from Rabbi David Foreman, which tries to. Yes, Linda.
And for something on the other side of that, of all Bnei Israel, he was the only one that actually saw God, was up at Mount Sinai with God. So he isn't at, I guess, at the level of a person above that.
Right. So the demand. So Linda's making a good point. So the demands on him are that much higher. Yafi.
To talk.
Yafi. So the demands on him
to plead for him, and only God was above him.
Yes, but Yafi, Linda's making a good point. The greater the level the person is on, the more that is expected and demanded from them, right?
It.
You know, a 5-year-old loses their cool, we can understand it. We don't expect a 20-year-old or a 50-year-old, right, to lose their cool in that same situation. So the greater the person is, on one hand, he's so great and he's done so much, God should cut him more slack. On the other hand, the greater the person is, the greater the expectation, the greater their ability, and the greater the expectation. Very, very fascinating approach that Rabbi David Foreman brings to explain the Rashi. Right? Rashi says that this was meant to bring about a kal v'chomer. Right? They were supposed to understand. Just one second. He explains what is the difference between hitting the rock and speaking to the rock. Why 40 years earlier? Approximately 40 years earlier. Why was he supposed to hit the rock? And now when they're about to enter the land of Israel, it's not a matter of hitting the rock. It's crucially important that he speak to the rock. And this we've mentioned a number of times, that we are about to go through a transition in the way that God is dealing with us and with the world. This is why the Meraglim had issues about going into Israel, that it would be a step down of sorts. We're going now from a miraculous state of existence where the water comes from a rock and the food comes, man, falls down from the heavens, and the ananei kavod and the clouds of glory, they envelop us as we make our way through, smoothing the road before us. We're going from there into the land of Israel, where we need to see the Kedusha, the holiness, we need to see God's intervention, not in the overtly miraculous, but in the day-to-day. That's the transition that we need to make now. And it's going to be a difficult transition. Hitting the rock and speaking to the rock. Miracles, the likes of which they had in the Midbar, was like breaking a rock. Does a rock want to give out water? No, a rock doesn't give out water. But what are you going to do? You're going to take a stick and you're going to smack that rock, and it's going to do what we're telling it to do. It's going to go against its teva. It's going to go against its nature. The whole Midbar was a series of things going against their nature. What does a yam, what does a sea normally do? Flows. What is Kriyat Yam Suf? You're breaking its nature. Right? You're taking a stick and you are, granted there was the hand we discussed before, but the idea is you are breaking its nature. Now when you're breaking the nature of nature, you're also breaking the person in the process. Meaning, how much free will do I have? You're breaking the person also. There is not that much room for free will. Actually, famous Gemara in Shabbos, it says that they stood tachtit hahar. The simple meaning is they stood by the foot of the mountain, by Mount Sinai, Har Sinai. But what does tachtit actually mean? Under. Mitachat. Under the mountain. What do you mean under the mountain? So the sages say, Kafa aleim har kagigit. God took the mountain, put it over their heads like his big barrel, and said, Im tikablu mutav. If you'll accept it, great. And if not, sham tekvuratchem. There will be your burial place. Does that mean literally that God lifted up the mountain, put it over their head? Probably not. What does it mean? It means it was as if the mountain was over their head. Did they have a choice? There was this incredible revelation. There was no choice. There was no free will. On the contrary, when we're forced into something, what's the first thing we look to do? How do I get out of here? Right? What's my escape plan? Where's the hatch? Right? And what did it result in, actually? 40 days later, what did it result in?
The golden calf.
Golden calf, Cheta Egel. That was when you break something, then it doesn't allow it to be it. That was hitting the rock. That was setting the stage for the travels through the Midbar for those years. Now there needed to be a new approach. A new approach is that we are within the Teva. The seeds will be planted and the seeds will grow. Things naturally do the will of Hashem. We naturally want to do the will of Hashem. That is what is inside of us, but it becomes very convoluted. Mankind with our free will, but everything does the will of Hashem. The sun does the will of Hashem. The moon, the oceans. When we see incredible natural settings, We are moved by this glory of God's world and everything doing its purpose, right? Down on the micro level, on the macro level, and on the micro level, there are the laws of science, the laws of physics, the laws of chemistry. It's not random, it's not haphazard. Everything does its role. Everything does that which is asked of it. Entering into the land of Israel, we are no longer going to have this mountain over our heads. We're no longer going to have the man falling close or far, depending on my spiritual level. It's going to be a normal, mundane existence where the miraculous is going to be hidden within the teva, the nature being everything naturally doing the will of Hashem. What is that represented by? Not smacking the stone and forcing it. Daber el hasela. Right? Granted, that's going to be a miracle. Granted, that's a miracle. But it's a different type of miracle. It's a different stage of miracle. It's a miracle of Daber el hasela, speak to the sela, and it will naturally do that which is being asked of it. And we needed to learn from that we don't need to be forced. It's not good. It's not positive. It's not healthy. It's not productive. It's not as meaningful for us to be forced into it. We will be living a normal, mundane, natural existence. And because God asks of us to do it, we will naturally go ahead and do it. So Moshe's not doing that showed an ihatama. How would you define ihatama? A not properly fit for the role to be the one to bring us into the land of Israel. That was the old approach. That was old school. That was so 40 years ago, hitting the stone. And that is not the role, that is not the lesson, that is not the mindset, the mode that we need to be in as we're entering Israel. That can't be smack and you'll do it, smack and you'll do it, smack and you'll do it. There needs to be this internal alignment with that which is being asked of us. Yes, Janet?
Also, when you say this natural order of everything entering through just natural laws, doing Hashem's will, we see that in Bereshit, the way it's set up, and that was the bear as well. So that it harkens back to...
Yeah, beautiful. Vayomer Hashem yihi or. God said, let there be light. Vayihi or. Right? All those, the Asara Ma'amarot. Beautiful point, Janet. The 10 utterances that God said, let there be. Right? And the world did the will. That is what the lesson that we needed to incorporate. And therefore, not as much as a punishment for Moshe and not cutting him the slack, but more an issue of this no longer being the role that Moshe, the role that was that needed to be played by the leader. Yes, though.
Moshe doesn't go into the land, yet all the complainers did.
Well, let's keep that in perspective. The complainers, those who were part of the Meraglim,
Didn't.
did not. Right?
But all the people that were here, all of them that saw this, they
Yes.
all went.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
And then, based on this, it could be argued, well, you're not the right fit for this position, so you'll hand off to Yahushua, but why couldn't, just from, like, Yafi says, I mean, we don't know Hashem, but there's still a disconnect about a Rahmanas of Hashem.
So let's
Wait,
one second. Okay. Well, in regard to that, the expression that we use, we can have, right, and they need to be handed over to Yehoshua, right? Imagine if Obama was still in the White House.
You can't have two leaders.
Okay? Right? There needs to be a handover. There needs to be one dabar, we say one leader there, and there can't be two. But keep in mind, keep in mind, Moshe wanted to go into the land of Israel, right? Why did Moshe want to go into the land of Israel?
To see the place.
Shawarma?
Maybe.
What was it?
To see the place that Hashem had designated.
כי זה היה מפעל חייו.
Because he wanted the closeness to Hashem that only Israel, as opposed to other lands, avails. Hashem said to him, guess what? You don't need that, and I'm going to embrace you and take you, and you will have closeness to Hashem that far supersedes anything that a physical person can have, even in the land of Israel. So what Moshe wanted, Moshe got exponentially, but not in the way that he had wanted. He, as the servant, wanted to do more service, more service, more service. At a certain point, the Master Hashem says, come here. Come here. Enough service. Right? You've done more than could be imagined. Now it's time to come here.
אני לא חושב שזה ככה זה הובהר לו.
לא.
לא בדיוק ככה הוא...
בטוחה שלא.
סליחה?
אני לא חושב שככה זה בדיוק הובהר לו.
That's not
אני
the
לא
way it
חושב
was
שזה
portrayed.
הובהר לו בצורה
That it was
הזאת. זה הובהר
portrayed
לו
to him.
בתור עונש
Honest.
העונשים.
It was like a punishment.
It's a holding back of something. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's like
But let's keep in mind that what he got was exponentially more than what he wanted. Right? Moshe was not there for the shawarma. Right? He wasn't there because he wanted to take some pictures and post it on his Instagram. Right? Moshe wanted Israel for the closeness to Hashem that it afforded, and he got that exponentially.
But the closest to Hashem would have been a burial in the land of Israel and not out of the land of Israel.
Yeah?
I didn't get it.
Because
Zot
and he didn't
Chukat
get it. And this
HaTorah.
and this was a punishment.
Zot,
not,
we started
embracing.
Zot Chukat HaTorah. Right?
אבל זה פשוט
That we're not
נסגר
going to
בלתת.
fully
זה מה
understand. Right? Zot Chukat HaTorah, Yafi. We're not going to fully understand. Right? Right? And as I say very often, I don't want to worship a God whose wisdom can be contained inside these 4 square inches of gray matter. Right? If we're accepting a God and worshiping a God, then we need to understand Zot Chukat HaTorah, that we're not going to fully understand everything. But we need to do our darndest to try our best to try. Okay, my friends. We'll call it over. So next, right, I can't promise fireworks, but July 4th, we will get together. Those who can join us, wonderful. Those who can't, you'll send us a hot dog. Okay. Okay. Huh? A vegetarian dog. Dove, you wanna cut that off for us, please?
אני יצאתי לגמרי מחוזקת בדעות שלי.